Silent Lucidity is a really a song a lot of my students have learned over the years and really liked it. It is a great arpeggio finger-picking song, although Chris DeGarmo plays it with a pick. Cross-picking. So we'll talk about both ways of playing it, cross-picking it with a pick and then playing it with your fingers. Now, this came out in 1990 on Queensryche's album, Empire, and it falls right smack in the middle. They were kind of a progressive metal band from the late 80s and early 90s, and it falls right smack in the middle of the power pop ballad sort of tune. Lush orchestration, very simple chord progression. We'll definitely talk about the chord progression. Actually, you saw all the chords there, G, E minor, C, and A minor. And there's a D later on, too. And so we're going to talk about a lot of different parts in this song. The most unusual is the time signature in parts of it. There are measures, most of it is in 4/4 time, but there are occasional measures in 15/16 time. So we'll take a whole look at a rhythmic breakdown of what the heck that even means. And then we'll talk about the chord progression, how this is really just a G chord, and this is an E minor chord. You could even just be strumming chords. Later on, in the second verse, he's playing it with lowered versions of the chords, more bass notes in it. So it's just a little variation on that. Then it goes into the chorus, which I didn't play any of there. Going through a D chord and a C chord and stuff. I don't want to give too much of it away here. I'll save that all for the lesson. But it could also just be strummed using Ds and Cs in there. There's a cool little interlude that the key changes, and we'll look at a picking way of doing this. And we'll even talk a little bit about the lead that happens in there. However it goes, something like that. But when I get to that part, I'll know it. So anyway, we'll talk about those leads, and then we'll talk about this other descending, crashing thing that happens at the end of the interlude. The lead is continuing to do this while bass notes are dropping. Anyway, so all kinds of cool stuff in this song, and not very hard to play, actually. So you don't have to play it up to speed, and it's a great exercise for you to just improve your picking and your knowledge of partial chords, because the important thing about the picking patterns that happen in here is you very rarely have to hold down the whole chord. You're only holding down a couple of notes that you need. So anyway, we'll break down 15/16 time. We'll take a look at the chord shapes, talk about the right hand picking, and then we'll take it through the tablature I have has been condensed down to just the important parts. It's only a couple of pages. We've got stuff that breaks down the intro, the verse, the chorus, and the interlude, and then it's pretty much that's pretty much the whole thing. So there's of course an attachment that has the lyrics and just the chord progression as well. If you want to just strum it and sing it, you're welcome to do that. It's a tough one to sing. It takes some serious drama. But okay, let's get into Silent Lucidity. The chords we're going to look at in Silent Lucidity usually just need to have a couple of fingers played. And so we're going to start, if you take a look at the tab, we're going to start with this G chord played with my first finger on the 5th fret of the D string and my 4th finger at the 7th fret. And in that shape, all I'm going to have to do, this is one of the ways we're playing G here, and the melody note, I'll refer to bass notes and melody notes at different times, the melody note is going to move from the 7th fret to the 5th. The arpeggio pattern we're going to be using with your right hand really requires 2 fingers and your thumb. So your thumb will be playing a bass note in a rotation where most of the bass notes, matter of fact, probably all the time, are followed by 2 fingers. Always going from a higher finger to a lower finger, or a higher string to a lower string. So sometimes we're going to be using your index finger on the 2nd string and your middle finger on the 1st string, and just keeping a pattern going like that. I'm just playing open strings right here. And sometimes on other chords, these fingers will be on these 2 strings. And the bass note could be any place. It could be on the 6th string or the 5th or the 4th, just depending on what chord we're playing. I want to talk a little bit about, maybe a lot, we'll see how this goes, about the time signature 15/16 and really just time signatures in general. So just kind of it depends on how much you already know about this, but I'm going to go through a pretty brief explanation of simple time signatures. And most of this song is in 4/4 time. Now what that's telling us, the two numbers in a time signature, the top number is telling us how many beats there are in a measure. How many times are you going to tap? Now each of those beats is going to be subdivided maybe even 2 or more times into smaller notes or smaller beats. We'll get back to that in a minute. The bottom number, though, is really important as well. It's representing a type of note. Let's take a look at the verse. So starting with the tablature that you have out there either as a guitar profile or a PDF that hopefully you've printed up and are looking at, I want to talk about the verse first and then the introduction, because the introduction has a little trickier parts. We'll talk a little bit more about the 15/16 time, but hopefully you saw the whole breakdown of that. And what we're going to be doing here is, again, using your thumb to play the bass notes, your middle finger to play what's usually going to be on the first string, the melody notes, and then your index finger to play filler notes. So all you have to do here is hold down your first finger on the G, 5th fret of the D string, and your 4th finger on the first string for the note B. The first note of every measure is an 8th note, so you have to make sure that you don't rush from the first note to the second one. The first one has to be held twice as long as all the rest, and other than that, it's a steady flow of 16th notes. So, like I talked about in the theory breakdown, what we want to do is have you hit that first note and count it for 2 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There were my first 8 16th notes, counted out very carefully. The chorus is really simple, but we're going to dress it up a little bit too. Because what really happens here is one guitar really just hits the chords. It's a D and a C. And that's all you got to do is play a D chord and strum. If you're doing it with a pick, you could just wail on it like that. You can play them just as power chords. I'll go to the invisible pick technique. But what I really like to have people do here is play a little bit more picking the way similar to what I found on some live videos, where we're going to pick out a little bit of melody over the chords. On the D chord, and then something similar on the C chord. The interlude to Silent Lucidity is just kind of an extension of what was going on with a couple of drastic key changes and then a very simple basic lead played over a crashing, descending bass thing that runs through an octave and a half worth of notes in a completely unrelated key. But let's take a look at it. So the tablature that I have to this is labeled Part 2. So Part 2 shows 2 guitar parts, one rhythm part, and then Chris DeGarmo's part, the lead. Although when they play this live, they pretty much play the leads together and let the bass and the orchestra do all this other stuff. So it opens up with a very quick key change up to an E flat chord. Now, using the same C shape that we had at the 3rd fret, this lands at the 6th fret. Now, I didn't talk too much about this, well, haven't talked about it yet, but when we play that shape of a C, and we're picking out when we're playing the 3 notes that make up the C chord that we had earlier in the verse to the song, the melody, we're hearing the root of the chord, the 5th of the chord as the filler note, and then the 3rd. Right? So if you're doing this on electric, though, you'd be able to do that slide up to the 5th, and it will work out. So one more time. Now I'm in good shape to put my 2nd finger on the 5th fret for that quick little bounce. Well, this is not something we can really slap a metronome on, but I'm going to play through the intro and the first verse fairly slowly that you can try to hang with me. Now, so my quarter notes will start off about this fast. 1, 2, 3, now. for the chorus and the interlude, I am going to put a metronome on. I've got it set at 60, which is a little bit slower than the album. Just run through the chorus. You can play along with me, and then I'll run through the rhythm part to the lead, or the interlude, which is, of course, the lead. And you can play along there, too. Let's see how close we can get this. 2, 3, 4.